Hey, what's up? This is Chosen, and this video is going to be the best AoE nuker damage potential champions in the game, in my opinion. So let's get into it. Alrighty, so I'm going to go over the top 10 in my opinion. I'm also going to do a few honorable mentions and some fun ones to talk about as well before we dive into that. And I'm not going to go in exact order because there is so much that goes into it. It's not just about the multiplier of the skill. You've got to look at the base stat. So how realistic, how easy is it to get that stat really bumped up? Then you've got to look at how do the books affect the damage. Some champions get like 30, 40, 50% from books. Some champions get like 10% from books. So you gotta wonder, is it booked? Is it not booked? Then some champions have qualifiers. So they can hit insanely hard if you meet certain qualifiers. And then some champions don't have qualifiers. So really hard to make the perfect list. I'm just gonna do my best to kind of think about all of this in an all-encompassing umbrella and give you my, my top 10 and then some honorable mentions. Honorable mention number 1 is going to be the best AoE damage dealing epic champion in my opinion, and that is Skullcrown. This A2 here can nuke insanely hard, and then she was also really popular in Blender comps because of the AoE A1 that can place an extra hit if the target has more than 50% HP. So definitely an amazing AoE damage dealing epic champion. And then Kaitis, I know he is viewed as a meme in the raid community and not a good champion, but situationally, he can hit insanely hard with this Bleeding Wounds ability that attacks all enemies 2 times and increases according to HP that he has lost. Now, if he loses a bunch of HP or dies and gets revived with like a Cardinal strat or something in the arena, he can absolutely smack and be probably one of the hardest hitting champions in the game with this ability. Staying in the Night Rev, another obvious choice for a fun nuker is Hegemon because he's got this AoE ability here. The multiplier is not insane. It's about a 3.7 times attack, but he gets 30% damage from books, and he always goes first. So definitely a super fun nuker to have on your roster. And then surprisingly enough, staying in the Night Revenant for the 4th champion is going to be Bistiphus here. Now, the cool thing about Bistiphus is look at that base attack. 1795. I believe it's the highest in the game, almost 1800. An absolutely bonkers base attack, but the trade-off is the multipliers of his AoE abilities, the A2 and the A3, are both only a 3.2 times attack. And then in the Demon Spawn, Drexthar Blood Twin, surprisingly enough, has an AoE nuke ability here that is 5.2 times defense. So he is a defense scaling champion who can be pretty sturdy, and then also has a pretty good multiplier of the 5.2 times the 1398 there for doing AoE damage as well. But now let's go ahead and get into the top 10 AoE damage dealers in my opinion, and I'm trying to take into consideration all of the abilities, the A1, the A2, the A3, and the average AoE damage potential per turn. So not just taking into consideration that one nuking ability, trying to look at all of them. And I'm actually going to start at number 10 with someone that you all think is terrible probably, and that is War Mother. I know she gets a lot of grief in the raid community as being terrible, but the A2 and the A3 here actually have a 4.5 multiplier times attack, and her base attack of 1387 is not that bad. Plus, you get the bombs that she places to do even more damage on top of that multiplier, and the own ability here that can detonate her own bombs. So in terms of being an AoE damage dealer, the 2 abilities here with the really good multipliers of a 4.5, the bombs, the self-detonation, War Mother can actually crank out AoE damage. Then Yannicka, also a very good damage dealer. The A1, if you get the qualifier on her with the Veil, is going to attack all enemies 2 times. Now the multiplier is only a 2.1, which looks pretty low on the surface, 2.1 times attack, but it's going to be an AoE attacking all enemies 2 times. So a multi-hitter, you're basically getting a 4.2. And then her A3 is going to go ahead and match that. That is actually just a single hit, 4.2 times attack. The 1487 base attack makes her pretty easy to scale and get a really good attack rating. Plus the multi-hitter, that is the same multiplier as her A3, as long as you've got the Veil to get full potential out of that A1. Then we've got Candraphone, or as Manimal would say, Candy Phone. Now, on the surface, it doesn't seem like it because the AoE ability A2 is only a 3.7 times attack. But when you take into consideration that he does not need any accuracy or any qualifier on that, you can build him as a very sturdy, high-resistance DPSer, and he's got a pretty decent base attack of 1509 and a lot of self-buffing here on the A3. So lots of damage potential from Candraphone. Now, Robar is actually a pretty insane damage dealer as long as you get the right things to line up. I'm not doing this list in like a particular order. I'm kind of loosely going from 10 to 1, but I didn't want to put like an actual number on it because this stuff is so situational. But Robar has 2 AoE abilities, lots of potential, and this Merciless Assault ability can be one of the hardest hitting abilities in the game. If you get this stuff to qualify for him, it is going to crank out a ton of damage if you get the right team around him to hit these qualifiers. But if you're curious about the raw multiplier, it's going to be a 4.2 and a 4.3 on the A2 and the A3, and then he's got a really good base attack of 1619. Bess is another one that kind of gets slept on a little bit in the raid community, but is actually a pretty insane AoE damage dealer because you've got the A2 and the A3 that are both doing AoE damage. And the multipliers are 5.1 and 4.5 respectively when you couple that with the 1564 base attack and the fact that she's also an AoE 3-turn big version of defense break on that nuke ability. You start to see some pretty insane value and AoE damage potential from a Bess. Then we move into Ray. Now, Ray is an amazing champion and so much AoE potential because the A1, AoE, A2, AoE, A3, AoE, every single ability, so much AoE damage coming through from Ray every turn. And then when you couple that with getting the 50% multiplier on her damage on the A2, as long as you get any debuff, which is going to be very common, defense break, weaken, block buffs, things like that that are very common to place on your opponents during a fight, this A2 is going to hit insanely hard. Now, the unfortunate thing about Ray is the base attack is a little bit low at 1343 for a legendary damage dealer. That is a little bit low, but the multipliers are pretty decent at 2.5, 4.3, and 5.3. And we have to talk about Foley. This guy has aged like fine wine. Back in the day, we all thought Foley was trash, and he's just kind of slowly gotten more and more love from the raid community as the months go by and as raid ages as a game. Champions get released, things get released, we learn more about multipliers and how the game works. Foley has been aging extremely well and moving up the list. So he does have this AoE ability. The cool thing about this is it blocks revive. It's AoE nuke block revive. If you're curious about the multiplier, it is a 4 times attack. The base attack of 1476 is not amazing, but it's not bad. So lots of damage potential coming from Foley, especially when you consider the fact that the A2 here is going to hit 4 times at random and almost be a pseudo AoE that places Leech for 2 turns, and Leech has been buffed since the early days of raid. So that again made Foley even a little bit better as time went on. And then for the top 3 AoE damage dealers, in my opinion, I gotta start with Biggin. I don't have him, but I absolutely love this guy. His kit is incredible. And again, the A1 has AoE potential as long as you crit, which if you are building him as an endgame damage dealer, you're gonna have 100% crit on him. And then the A2 and the A3 are both AoEs, cranking out lots of damage and doing insane things in the kit, like stun, decrease accuracy, and decrease speed, all crucial things to place on your opponents. And the multipliers for Biggin are going to be 2.5 on the A1, but you do get to hit a target twice. You get to target one enemy and then attack all enemies. The A2 is just the single, solo, normal AoE, but it is a 3.6 multiplier with a base attack of 1575, so not bad. And then the A3 is going to seem like a low multiplier. It's going to be a 1.9, but look, we attack all enemies 2 times. So it's essentially a 3.8 instead of the 1.9 because of the 2 hits. And then at number 2 here, another one that I don't have, but he is an insane damage dealer, and that is Ethos. We've got the 2 AoE abilities. One is a triple hitter. Now the multiplier is pretty low on that one. It's a 1.4, but when you take into consideration that it hits 3 times, 1.4 times 3 is 4.2. So basically a 4.2 multiplier with a 1608 base attack, can scale very well. And then this A3 is an insane nuking ability because if you build him with 0 crit and just go full on crit damage as just a nuker, like if you're prioritizing that one ability to do as much damage as possible, you've got a 4.4 multiplier on the A3 here that you don't need to build any crit. You can just go max crit damage. Now the thing that stinks is he is a damage dealer, so you're gonna want the A2 and the A1 to crit and do damage. So unfortunately, you get caught in this kind of tough spot where do you build him for crit or do you just go all in max on making this A3 nuke as hard as possible? So I guess it would kind of depend on the situation that you're building him for. But Ethos, no doubt about it, can crank out insane damage. And you guys already know who number 1's going to be, right? I'll give you a couple seconds to think about it. We're heading into the dwarves. It's gotta be none other than Trunda, the nuke queen who can crank out AoE damage like none other. This Forge Rhythm ability is absolutely insane. If you get her built with low accuracy so that she does not place stuns, you can see here at the end of this ability, places an extra hit on enemies not under stun debuff. So she has a pretty decent multiplier of a 3 on this ability, but when we hit twice, it is now a 6. So you get a 6.0 times attack on this ability with a 1608 base attack, so she can really scale up the damage with the Forge Rhythm. But it doesn't stop there, because the A2 is also going to target one enemy, then attack all enemies after that, and inflict 60% of that damage after hitting the one enemy, and the multiplier on that is 6 times attack. So even when you scale it down a little bit for the 60%, it's still a very good AoE ability. So the cool thing about Trunda is you can build her kind of normal and get some accuracy to try to take advantage of some of the stuns that she can place in faction wars, dungeons, or something. Or you can build her to just be a crazy low accuracy nuker with this Forge Rhythm ability, hitting twice and doing insane damage. All right, so that is going to do it for the top 10 AoE damage dealing potential champions, in my opinion. I'm sure some of you will disagree. I would love to hear about it down in the comments. I really enjoy learning from your perspectives. And just to wrap up the list, the top 10 was Trunda, Ethos, Biggin, Foley, Ray, Abess, Robar, Canrifon, Yannica, and Warmother. So yeah, that's gonna do it for this one. As always, thank you for watching. Have a good rest of your day. Peace.